What is going on? We are here live for the first time with Bomber Boys. Well, at least in this format. We've done Bomber Boys on radio live, but now we do it coming at you on video on one of baseball's biggest days of the year. The Major League Baseball trade deadline has officially closed, but year in, year out, some deals will continue to trickle in. Already deals trickling in as we came on air. Another big time deal for the New York Yankees. They get their third reliever of the day. They get a shortstop. So much to unpack, not just with the Bronx Bombers, but with all of Major League Baseball. I'd say, how are you? But it's been a crazy day, and we've pretty much been in contact throughout the course of it as deals have just been flowing in.
Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. The Tampa Bay Rays just got Griffin Jacks. The Tigers just got Charlie Morton. All these rolling through as we speak. Again, all the trades just have to be done by 6 o'clock. They can roll in to the office of the MLB for as long as I guess it takes to finalize the details. I think the latest I can remember is one coming in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes afterwards. Nothing more than that. So should be exciting to react live. Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, they stay with the Marlins. That's the report that comes through here. So it's been a crazy day. I gotta say, I am ready to just shut my phone off and not look at it for a couple days because I've just been glued to it the last 2 or 3 days. Plenty around the Yankees. They went today, really, I guess, for lack of better terms, balls to the walls, especially in the bullpen. And I think this team filled where it needed to, except for one spot. So it should be fun. And I mean, we'll see if anything else comes through.
There's going to be a lot of live reaction because, as you said, even in just the few seconds we did the open there, there's the Charlie Morton trade and the Tigers. It went from pushing hard to get a starter, and then now they get Morton. Yankees seconds before we came live, getting their third reliever, though. It's going to be Camilo Duval. He's controlled. He's going to be a free agent in 2028. He's been an all-star before. 3.09 ERA, a 4-2 record, 47 appearances with 15 saves, 46 and 2/3 innings spun, 50 strikeouts, and 1.2 walks hits per innings pitched. Last two outings, pitching scoreless against the Pirates. That'll be the final send off for him with San Francisco. A very, very weird team, obviously, coming into this season. Didn't really know what to expect. They get Devers, felt like they were going to go for it, and then they end up shipping pieces off. And here with Duvall, probably one of their biggest. The closer for them now joins the Yankees, who have a back end of the bullpen that looks to be one of the better in baseball. A lot of teams got better in that respect, but especially the Yankees here getting two controlled guys just right off the top here. I feel like the two headline pieces of the trades today, David Bednar acquired earlier this afternoon, and now Duvall here, both of them controlled through 2028, and both of them very, very highly productive back end, high leverage relievers.
You could take it one step further. Jake Bird is under control as well. He's not a free agent until 2029. So you look at the Yankees, and the plan was clear. Go get guys that had control. And we had kind of heard that. The Yankees were, okay taking on rentals in terms of the hitters they acquired. And if they were to get a starting pitcher, it seemed like they were okay with the rental possibility there, but they would have preferred, somebody with some control, and they go to their bullpen, and that's what they wanted. I said it on our show on Tuesday, just a couple of days ago. The Yankees don't have guys under control for next season. Mark Leiter, I believe, is arbitration eligible. He is, and Jonathan Loaizaga is a team option. And with the way Jonathan Loaizaga has been pitching, depending on what that option comes out to be, the Yankees might not, end up picking that up. We'll have to see come the offseason. So you kind of answer some questions for next season at the same time as improving your roster for this season. The Yankees bullpen has been nothing short of atrocious as of late. The ERA over 6.9 at the moment since I believe it's June 13th when the Yankees started really struggling, and their record in that time, I believe 17-24. Now, after the 2 wins in this series or something close to that, whatever the case is, they've been struggling in large portion due to their bullpen. And I mean, even right now, when the Yankees were coming back from this game that's been under delay for so long, the question on Yes Network was, could Bednar get there and be activated before this game ends? Because, well, the Yankees don't have guys to get through today. Yerry De Los Santos on the mound right now for New York, but at the end of it, this is huge moves. I mean, you look at some of their numbers, specifically Bird as of late has been struggling, but you look at Bednar, you look at Duval, you just look at these guys all, and you see the vision for the Yankees. You see a team that you think back to 2017, the last year of Joe Girardi. What led the Yankees to be able to get back to, game 7 of the ALCS in a year that they weren't even supposed to make the playoffs? It was some swagger, which I think the Yankees have kind of found their way back with. Ahmed Rosario, Ryan McMahon last night after the walk-off, and the bullpen. You think back to, the years with Aroldis Chapman and Andrew Miller and, David Robertson providing for the Yankees, all those guys. And now this year, it seems like the Yankees have refound that focus. They got the guys they needed to in terms of, the guys we just mentioned, McMahon, Rosario, and we'll keep going, and Slater and Caballero right before the, deadline as well. And now they get their pitching. The only question mark that remains for the Yankees is their rotation. I think you and I are probably both a little disappointed in what the Yankees did for their starting pitching market, specifically that they did not want to give up Spencer Jones for anyone, specifically that they really wanted to get every player for free is what it seemed like was coming out. Brian Cashman's, doing this with this team. He's talking this team, but it seems like he's too far away. And the Yankees, at the end of it, you think of everything they got this deadline, they barely gave up anything, and they kept their top prospects. And I think that was, the vision of Brian Cashman, was to keep those prospects, not give them away for a rental. And they didn't give them away for the rental, and the rest of their prospects went for guys that you have years of control. So, I mean, this has to be a successful deadline. If I had to put a letter grade on it, I'd probably go a B+, maybe even an A-. Again, just missing a starting pitcher. If you were a teacher giving out the report card, what would you give Brian Cashman right now?
Well, I thought it was going to be incomplete, but we did just get this as we put the quick overlay here. This is from Jack Curry saying that that's it for the Yanks for today. So that's the end of it. So we officially can give it a letter grade. And I'm going to try to get his tweet off the screen. There we go.
We also just got that return for Doval. Jesus Rodriguez, the catching first base, third base prospect, Parks Harbor, and Tristan Vreeling, and one other. So a big move there, but again, years of control. The Yankees were willing to do that.
Vreeling, a top 30 prospect, Rodriguez as well. Rodriguez, the headliner in that deal. As we kind of break it down, though, as you said, giving it a letter grade now that it's fully done, I would say I fall in the B+ territory too. I think a high profile starter would have probably taken it up to that A- range. I think that would have been a nice luxury to have. But when you look at what they were able to do, I 100% agree. This feels like one of the teams of old for the Yankees. This feels like having a three-headed monster of a Chapman, Britton, and Miller at the back end of your pen, but maybe even stronger because you look into what these guys can be or have been, and you've got a guy in Bednar who's been rock solid this year, hasn't allowed an earned run over his past, 10 innings pitched. He's been really, really good this year after a rocky year last year. He's been one of the best high-leverage arms in Major League Baseball this year. You've got Duvall here, who immediately becomes one of those top 4 guys as well. Devin Williams, who outside of last night had been kind of coming back down to form and finding his rhythm, I think, a little bit here. Luke Weaver, who I still think isn't fully 100%, but you look at the 4 of them and you have 4 really, really good arms. Jake Bird, a guy who's been struggling as of late, but kind of like Ryan McMahon, I think you mentioned it in a tweet. These are the kind of guys who just need to change the scenery sometimes. And him in that, he's been one of our targets that we've talked about on the show for some time. Could be of value as you kind of remake and rebuild this bullpen. So as you look at it, I mean, obviously 2 guys in Duvall and Bednar who are the headliners, they're controlled for some time. That's going to be advantageous. Now, if Williams or Weaver walk in the offseason or both of them, you're going to have 2 guys at the back end of that pen, and Bird as well you throw in there, who can really hold things down. I think they'll bring one of Weaver or Williams back, but that's a story for another day and another episode. And then you talk about the insurance. I think you said it there, the depth. I mean, this is a team that, it's the depth that would have been great for them to have gotten in the winter, but they were never going to do that. They were going to try to give some run for some of these prospects, for the Oswald Perazzas of the world, for the Jorge Vivases of the world, and then also trying to see what Oswaldo Cabrera could do before he got hurt, or if you could resurrect DJ LeMahieu. None of that panned out. Cabrera got hurt, and even looking further down, Everson Pereira was never a guy who you saw a real window with for this team, especially with how well the outfield performed this year for the better part of the season. So it didn't feel like they gave up outside of Rafael Flores a lot at this deadline, and it felt like they came away with the depth that this team's been lacking for some time. When you have Ryan McMahon now at the hot corner, you have Caballero, who's going to be the new kind of backup alongside Ahmed Rosario, particularly Caballero at shortstop. expect him to possibly spend some time in Scranton Wilkes-Barre as well. He also has 34 stolen bases on the season. He's going to be that guy in September and in October who you count on to try to swipe some bags in big moments. So he's going to be a big value in that regard and fill that Oswald Peraza slot. Rosario's already been a great hype man and had a good pinch hit AB the other night. So I feel like they brought a lot of depth to this team. They filled the voids they needed to fill. And I think it would have taken it up a notch if they had gotten a starting pitcher. But this is one of those rare moments that we talked about last week. We were even texting about it earlier that the starting pitching, as much as it would have sucked to, not come away with a top tier arm, you also know that Luis Seal's about to come back. And then you have Will Warren, Cam Schlittler. You do have, at least looking a year down the road, what could be an embarrassment of riches in the starting rotation. And yes, that's a good problem to have, as we talked about on the show the other day, if you get another controlled arm like we wanted them to get. But at the same time, you're banking on Schlittler, you're banking on Warren, and their ERAs, their performance, about in the same kind of tier as some of the arms like Dustin May that were being floated about. So if you're not going to get one of the top tier guys, you might as well hold on to your own, go with the homegrown approach. Worst case scenario, one of the two, if not both of the two, end up becoming your kind of Chad Green, Johnny Lasagnas, where they transition into the bullpen in some time. But for now, as it stands, I give it a B+. I thought it was the depth kind of getting deadline and the top tier relievers that, yes, it reminds you of Yankees of old.
Yeah, I think you brought up the point about the starting pitching, which I think is our only negative here. And you think about what the Yankees have mainly in October, because I think for August and September, you don't have a problem getting through it. Marcus Stroman is still on your roster, Will Warren, Cam Schlittler, and obviously there's some prospects there as well that you could always bring up if you have to. The real question is, what's Luis Seal going to be? Because you have Carlos Rodon and you have Max Fried, and you have their abilities to be proven, and you know what you're getting out of them. Max Fried bounced back the other day, just allowing 2 earned runs. The other 2 were unearned in that start because of Volpe's struggles in the field, which Caballero helps with. But you know what you're going to get most likely out of Max Fried and Carlos Rodon. Luis Seal becomes a question mark now in this Yankee, rotation, because what version of Luis Seal are you getting? Are you getting Luis Seal of the first half last year when he was cruising to the AL Rookie of the Year? Are you getting the second half where he struggled a little bit more because he was starting to tire out? And sure enough, it leads to an arm injury that he misses the first half. So that's a question mark. So you have 1 and 2 figured out. You hope that Luis Seal is 3. And in the playoffs, 3 can get you through. You're probably going to need a 4th. So Will Warren or Cam Schlittler, whoever you trust more heading into the postseason, I feel like we can confidently say it won't be Marcus Stroman. I think that's the one thing that we have no clue about, but we could confidently say it won't be Stroman. So Schlittler or Warren's that 4 starter, the other one in the bullpen, most likely. What makes more sense there? Probably Will Warren, a full season in the MLB, and then Schlittler with his 100-mile-per-hour fastball coming out of the bullpen, because that's how bullpen arms are. Now, you would have loved to get a starter that could be that, bona fide number 3, maybe that number 4, depending on how Heel ends up performing. This way, you wouldn't have to question about Warren or Schlittler in the postseason, but you're going to have to, because you didn't end up, the asking price was too high, and we don't know any of the deals. Brian Cashman is set to talk with Yes Network later, and we'll hear what he has to say about maybe not pursuing the starting pitcher. And I mean, again, there's still more trades coming in. Mike Yastrzemski just went to the Royals from the Giants. That one just came through now. So there's still possibility, but it seems like the Yankees are done. And I think all around, we both give it really high grades, B+. We started, a couple weeks ago, or not a couple weeks ago. We started, the other day, we went through McMahon and the Rosario trade, and those were where we were at in terms of the Yankees moves at that point. And today they just unloaded everywhere. And it feels like we have so many different trades to break down on an individual level. But I think we start with, I guess, the one that came through first, which would be the Austin Slater move yesterday. And I know you were a little bit more confused about that move. You were a little bit more weary than I was. I mean, I kind of agree, as the 4th player in the Doval trade was just announced, Carlos De La Rosa. So we'll get to that trade in a second. But Slater, I think it still questions both of us, but this is what that trade looks like. And you see, it was just Gage Zeal, the 18th prospect in the Yankees organization at the time. It seems like one of those moves that can certainly help Dylan, but it seems like one of those moves that maybe they could have gone out and got Harrison Bader, who ended up in Philadelphia today, who I think you and I both wanted to see instead of Slater. But that being said, Slater playing today, and he's had a good first game in pinstripes.
32-year-old career journeyman, career pinch hitter, career kind of bench guy. And I mean, it was all over social media throughout the course of today that he's the kind of guy who you're just going to put in a maybe reliable moment against lefties. He's a guy who has statistically been one of the better pinch hitters in all of Major League Baseball for some time. You look through the work he's done in his career, career best season was, 270, 264, a 282 season in the COVID year. But it's a guy who's never seen a high volume of games outside of the COVID years, actually, and coming out of it with San Francisco. Over the past couple of years, he's been that kind of piece for a lot of teams, that bench outfielder, the depth piece. And then, with Chicago this year and all their struggles, still being able to post a 236 average, 721 OPS. He's a guy who didn't require a lot to get. He adds insurance. He adds a veteran piece to the equation. I think that's a big piece of all of this. And then I know I was apprehensive on it, but then you talk about what he's been able to do, really just whether it be against lefties, whether it be as a pinch hitter, he adds a lot of a lucrative nature to that as a depth piece that, with Harrison Bader as well, with his injury concerns, that's not as much of a question with Slater. So Slater's a bit of a safer option in that regard. Yes, if they were going to go out and get a depth guy at the outfield, would have loved it to be Bader. I said that the other day. It's an all vibes move. Not much justification outside of that on my end of things. But for Slater, a guy who's a career pinch hitter, a star pinch hitter, and is just another depth piece to add into the fold with a lot of question marks around what Aaron Judge will be when he's back. We don't want to see Giancarlo Stanton shagging fly balls, although it would be pretty fun for one game. And a team that wants to win some games, I don't really want to see it happen. I don't think you do either. So for Slater, a pretty good defensive guy, versatile, pinch hitter, mashes lefties, pretty durable. He checks all the boxes. And in a very depth-filled deadline, he's a guy that you add into the fold, and just like Rosario, just like McMahon, he's not that high-profile bat. He's not going to light the world on fire, but man, he's a lot better than watching a guy come up from AAA or, AA, get expedited up there and bat 147, because you know what you're getting with Austin Slater, just like you do with Rosario or McMahon. And I think that there's a lot to like about that.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best pinch hitters of the generation, or of at least of recent times, and 228 plate appearances as a pinch hitter in his career, batting 250 with a 417 on base percentage, 8 homers, 38 runs batted in. You think about the Yankees, you think about how they're constructed and the fact that, Jason Dominguez has had his struggles. Well, you got a righty hitter in Austin Slater who could come in against a lefty and help that. Grisham has been just as bad against lefties. A lot of people, don't want to talk about that. They think Grisham, and I mean, hey, he had a big home run last night. I'm not knocking the guy. We had the conversation last week or, 2 days ago about Grisham versus Dominguez, but they both have struggled against lefties. So late in the game, this makes it impossible to match up against the Yankees. You think back to the Guardians, you even think back to the Rays, a couple years ago, how analytics really just drove everything. Well, this isn't really analytically based, but you think about the fact, if you want to bring in a lefty, and it used to be obviously in Major League Baseball that you could bring in a lefty for one batter, or you could bring in a righty, but you got to face 3 batters. So if you see 2 lefties coming up, if you're the team facing the Yankees, well, that could just easily become 1 lefty, right? Or even none, with the Yankees acquiring also, Ahmed Rosario thrown in there as well to come off the bench. So it just seems like this is a move that, as much as I think it, also messes with the roster construction, we think the Yankees have issues with how the roster is constructed. This just kind of even makes it worse in the outfield. You think when Judge is healthy, there's going to be 5 outfielders plus whatever you want to consider Giancarlo Stanton at this point, obviously just a designated hitter, even though they say he might play some outfield. It just seems like it might, make things a little bit of a mess, but at the same time, it's a good mess, I think. World Series teams have depth, right? They have guys that can come off the bench and understand their role, and Austin Slater's been that guy throughout his career. I mean, he got his start with San Francisco, then I believe went to the Reds in Baltimore last year, started this season with Chicago, obviously, and now is a New York Yankee. So he's bounced around. He's understood his role in each place, and I mean, he's consistently performed for the New York Yankees, or not for the New York Yankees, but hoping that he consistently performs now for the New York Yankees. He's consistently performed throughout his career when he understands his role, and it's pretty clear that his role is not going to be an everyday starter. In fact, it might not be a start after today. It could be weeks on the bench, but he'll be ready and be that guy to come in late and help the Yankees, against the lefties and wherever you might need Slater to come in. So, I mean, as much as I didn't understand it, still kind of don't with roster construction. Figured the Yankees would have gotten rid of a Grisham or Dominguez. I still think it's a good move that will help the Yankees in terms of the matchup game.
It really felt like a precursor to another move, and for it to not come to fruition that Grisham or Dominguez got traded, I'm not necessarily complaining on the Dominguez front. As we talked about the other day,
I'm definitely not complaining.
Yeah, we were banging the drum for them to keep Dominguez in a big way, and I'm really happy they came out of the deadline still retaining him, because he's one of the future key pieces of that outfield, and far and away one of the best players, I think, in this last stretch, in one of the worst stretches of the Yankees season. So I'm happy about that. Grisham, I'm also happy about. I mean, we said it. If you're going to part ways with somebody, I get it, but in a guy in Grisham who's better than a lot of the alternatives out there as the depth piece to bring in, Grisham's been really solid for the course of the season. And I said this the other day when we talked about him possibly being shipped off. He's over exceeded expectations. So it was the move, as you mentioned, for Slater, and then it was the biggest shoe to drop of the day, even with the Duvall trade moments before we went on air. It's David Bednar. And it was a move that I think Yankees fans have been clamoring for really since the relief market kind of came to shape up. But all in all, trading away two catchers, Rafael Flores, trading away Perez, both top 15 prospects in the organization. Perez, not even 20 yet, got a lot of upside in what he could be, but definitely an uncertainty. Rafael Flores, UDFA, a guy who they added and completely built. The Yankees catching lab strikes again. He becomes a number 8 prospect, looks to project to be in the majors sometime within the next calendar year, and a guy who could contribute maybe even for the Pirates within the next couple of weeks. And then an outfielder in Brian Sanchez they got as a part of the Jake Bauers trade the past offseason. And in exchange, you get David Bednar, a guy who is a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native. The nickname is Renegade, and for right reason. He loved being at Pittsburgh, a multi-time All-Star, but unfortunately, with how that team's built, without Ben Cherington and how they want to build their team, Bednar is not going to get a chance to close out big games in Pittsburgh, but he will for the New York Yankees, a 2.37 ERA this season. 2-5 record, 17 saves, 42 games appeared in, 38 innings pitched, and in his last few outings, he has been spectacular. He had a bit of a rocky season a year ago, but this season seems like he's the David Bednar everybody wanted him to be. It's come to fruition. He's been pretty impressive, and I think that this is a kind of ad for the Yankees where you expected almost to give up a little bit more, and in exchange, you come away with a guy who will undoubtedly close out some games this season, but should close out some games in the long-term future. And excited to see, I think, David Bednar and what he can be in pinstripes.
Yeah, I mean, David Bednar, you mentioned the numbers on the season. This is a guy that was sent down to AAA after his first 3 appearances of the season against the Miami Marlins when he went 0-2, allowed 2 walk-offs. He did get a save in that rough stretch, an inning pitched, 4 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned. And since then, I mean, it's been 39 appearances with a 1.70 ERA. This is a guy that's really turned it around. We think about Ryan McMahon. We think about, Jake Bird, who we'll talk about in a second, and the need for a change of scenery. Bednar maybe didn't need that. Again, Pittsburgh native who's really done well. It seemed like in the offseason he needed more of that, change of scenery, and especially, up front to begin this season in the month of March before he was recalled on April 19th. But this is a guy that is been in big games before. I mean, the Pirates have struggled, but he's come up clutch for them over and over again. One bad season last year, and when you think about it, it was 2 months that really messed him up, and it was April and it was August. And yeah, maybe a little concerned heading into August this year for the Yankees with Bednar coming in, but of course, you go get the other relievers you do. You have relievers coming back from injury as well. You can allow him to have a rough month of August as long as he comes back in September and shuts things down. And of course, in October, then bounces back next year as well. But this is a move you really like if you're Yankee fans, a guy that, he was a 35th round pick out of Lafayette College, which not many people know about Lafayette College, but you and I do because Penn State tends to play him in different sports. But this is a guy, another 1.5 years of control, a 3.23 career ERA, 101 saves throughout his career. And I mean, a guy that's just bounced back big, and a guy that you think if you're the Yankees will come up clutch time and time again. Again, the Yankees really needed relief help. You get 3 relievers headlined by David Bednar. That's a pretty good haul. And I think, as much as he might want to still be in Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh born and raised, this is a guy that is going to want to compete for that World Series, get that ring on his finger. And just think about it. The Yankees have had a lot of success when trading with the Pirates. I mean, Clay Holmes, they did the same type of move with Clay Holmes, get a couple years of control with him from the Pirates before you ultimately let him walk and become a starter with the crosstown rival, the Mets. But all around, I mean, you talked about the two catchers that moved on originally. I was going to say that there was another catcher in the organization in Rodriguez, but he just got moved to San Francisco. So you definitely thinned out your catching depth. But at the same time, if you're the Yankees, it's been a catching factory. We used to talk about the Matt Blake factory, which has struggled recently, and hopefully these guys can come and help them. But this is an organization that knows catchers well. I mean, you used to have a former catcher in Joe Girardi coaching your staff. You got two catchers that are constantly around the organization in terms of Girardi and Flaherty with Yes Network. I mean, catching runs deep in New York Yankee pride. You think about Yogi Berra and you think about Thurman Munson, and I could keep going, but I won't. You think about all those guys. You think about the catching position for the Yankees, and you know they'll find their next guy. You probably wanted them to keep one guy. I wanted them to keep one guy, considering the production the Yankees are getting out of the catching spot right now and whatever Austin Wells was doing last night in the ninth inning. But at the same time, those two guys aren't guys you're willing to keep deals from going through for. So I can't complain about the deals. Certainly, even though you lose two catchers, your position is still going to be deep. And I think, again, David Bednar, to make an impact now and for another year, this trade is probably an underpay. I know Pittsburgh Pirate fans are not happy about it. I was able to go on their Twitter for a little while, but if you're a Yankee fan, you got to be happy about this one.
Yeah, and it's kind of the move that you said, pretty key word there, competitor. You get a guy who just loves to compete. He's passionate, and those kind of guys seem to thrive in New York. Those are the kind of guys who don't always seem dejected when things don't go their way, but rather go back out there and try to light a fire under their ass for the next time and prove the doubters wrong. Whereas you have the Devin Williamses of the world who, in his really rocky stretch of the season, which, again, could happen for David Bednar, it looked like he was just hanging his head and down on himself. With a Bednar, I think you're going to get a guy who plays with that fire, plays with that passion. And when you get into October and you get into meaningful baseball at the end of the season, he's the kind of guy that I want to see closing out the ninth and closing out some big games. And I think he's the guy who the Yankees coveted. I think he's the guy who they were able to kind of see Duran's market go. They were able to see Helsley's market go. They were able to watch these guys walk away knowing that they still felt like Bednar was their top choice, or at least one of their top two options, and they walk away with him. And I feel like that was the move that everybody was talking about. And then it was kind of the dead period. It was kind of the, when will the Yankees make another big move? We thought it'd be a starting pitcher. Ultimately, it did come via a guy that we predicted, though, and a guy that we've had on the radar here for Bomber Boys for some time. It was Jake Bird that the Yankees were able to acquire from, yet again, the Colorado Rockies. Jake Bird, another controlled reliever. Definitely not as notable as Duvall or as Bednar, but a guy who at the start of this season was talked about as maybe one of the high-profile relief arms coming for this trade deadline, a guy who has a hell of a beard that's going to have to go, 29 years old from California.
You don't have to get rid of him anymore.
It can't be as long as that, man. It's got to get at least room down.
Fair enough.
I think that's going to be the rule. But 2029, he's controlled till 4.73 ERA, 45 appearances, 53 and a third innings pitched. He's pitched quite a lot for Colorado as well. He got tagged for 4 earned runs his last time out against Cleveland, a game Colorado was still able to win. He's fluttered around this ERA for the bulk of his career. Again, like I said, start of the season was projected to be one of the top relief options coming to the market, especially with how well of an April, May, and even a June he had, has kind of come back down to life in recent games. But as you talk about guys who could benefit from a change of scenery, like Ryan McMahon, he's a guy who can benefit from coming to a winning situation for the most part. And in exchange, he gave up Rock Riggio, and I think that was the big headliner of that trade. A lot of fans were kind of upset, but I think the thing you said has been giving a lot of saving grace on Yankees Twitter right now, that feels like a move you make because you feel confident that Jazz Chisholm's your second baseman of the future. Seems like Jazz loves New York. New York loves Jazz. It's a pretty mutually beneficial relationship that I don't see ending anytime soon. So for Rock Riggio, then you talk about where he could play on the other side. And shortstop, whether you like it or not, Anthony Volpe is going to be there for some time. George Lombard's going to be joining him. Ryan McMahon's controlled for some time. There's not really a place for Riggio. And within the next calendar year, just like talking about Flores, he's a guy who's going to start kind of getting into that picture. And in a team like Colorado, he could get into that picture in September, maybe even if he has a hot August. So that was really the big move of the middle period until we came on air before Duvall's trade and Caballero. For me, Jake Bird was a guy that we had talked about for some time. Bomber Boys listeners have heard it. Not a guy who's going to light the world on fire as a high leverage reliever, but he's a controlled arm. He's still a relatively young arm, and he's a guy who can pitch some big innings in the 6th, 7th, and give you a little bit more confidence than the bargain bin toys that Matt Blake's played with for some time.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Rock Riggio on that conversation, a guy that hasn't played above Double-A, and the Yankees thought of him highly, and his career was starting to, I guess, take off and maybe percolate a little bit on the offensive side of things. In 40 games this season in Double-A after his promotion from High A, 11 homers, 28 runs batted in, low strikeout number, guy with some speed, 39 for 53 in his career. But you said it. I mean, this could indicate the extension for Jazz, which I think Jazz would like. I think many Yankee fans would like as well. George Lombard, he's a middle infielder. He's not just a shortstop or, the Yankees have him playing third right now, but he was kind of drafted as a shortstop second baseman. Roderick Arias, the Yankees number 11 prospect, it's the same deal, listed as a shortstop and second baseman. So there really was no place for Rock Riggio, like you said, and it's hard to see a guy that the Yankees used a 4th-round pick on last year, or rather in 2023 at Oklahoma State, a fun guy, but one that just didn't have that spot. I think everyone would agree Lombard and, Roderick Arias are guys that you would think of more highly if you're the Yankees and, just in general, if you watch baseball and have heard the names. And you get it for a guy that's going to help your team, not just for this year, but for years to come, like we keep talking about. Riggio's a couple years away, unless it's Colorado, then maybe he's a year or maybe even this year, like Dylan said. But Jake Bird, a guy in his last 17 appearances who's somehow 3-0 despite a 13.20 ERA, which is 22 earned runs in 15 innings, a 253 whip to go with that. But again, like you and I talked about with Ryan McMahon, like we've talked about with other guys, just that change of scenery could really help him. Playing in Colorado is never easy for a pitcher. He's a guy with a unique delivery as well, which makes him, probably more, valuable for the Yankees. Those unique deliveries can really throw off hitters, and it feels like the Yankees have a lot of just regular throwers outside of Tim Hill. So you get a guy like Bird and his delivery, and you think about what he did prior to his rough stretch. He had a 1.41 ERA in 38 1/3 through his first 28 appearances of the season. Again, that's in the same ballpark. That's in Colorado. So you think this guy will really, turn it on. The summer weather out in Colorado, the thin air is going to allow that ball to carry. And, he's been hit a little harder than normal. But again, a guy that changes scenery, just like his teammate Ryan McMahon, who's been exceptional since coming to the Yankees. Another multi-hit game for McMahon today. This is, one of those moves that on the surface, you might not look at it as a big move, but I could see Jake Bird, just like his, the last Bird that was in a Yankee uniform, and Greg Bird, having some big moments in October and, having some big moments and hopefully not getting DFA'd or traded away or released like Greg Bird did. But Jake Bird, just a guy that you think will turn it around. As much as we've kind of made fun of the Matt Blake pitching, factory as of late, this is a guy that could really benefit from that, and it just helps bolster that bullpen. Especially, you don't need him to be the 8th, 9th inning guy. Heck, you don't even need him to be the 7th inning guy. Yankees have so many guys in their bullpen now. You're talking about Bird coming out of the bullpen probably first. So 6th inning, maybe the 7th on a night that you get a little extra out of your, starter. That's pretty good. You don't have him in those high leverage situations necessarily, and that could certainly help him as well.
I think the one other thing with Bird that it's really interesting that you said there is, it's a high hit rate, a high homer rate, but think about where he's playing. Think about the team he's also playing for. And a lot of the times Bird's coming in, it's kind of in mop-up duty because the Rockies are already in a shootout of a game or already aren't playing the best game, and Bird's got to come out there because they're getting shelled. Whatever it may be, it's the bats are hot. They're coming in juiced with confidence against Bird, and Bird has struggled a little bit. But then I would much rather see, and I know you're in agreement on this, you take a chance on a guy like Jake Bird versus you take a chance on a guy who got DFA'd from somewhere else, like the Yankees have done for some time with the bullpen, and has gotten them to the point where they've had one of the worst bullpens in baseball since the start of June. So when you look at what you have too controlled with Bird, you talk about guys like Fernando Cruz, who will be back in the picture at some point, plus the two that we'll talk about Duvall a little bit more in just a beat here, but we'll talk about Bednar, controlled for some time. You've got 4 guys right there who aren't bargain bin toys. They aren't from, some far Netherland that came in and found their way with the team. They are guys who are held in high regard. Clearly, the 3 that got brought in today are, and then Fernando Cruz in the season he was having before getting hurt. You're talking about 4 guys who could be a part of this Yankee bullpen for the next 3 seasons, 4 seasons, whatever it may be, if you can retain guys. And you can really build a bullpen around them. And that's something to be happy about, because you can build it, Bednar, Duvall, and then go Cruz, Bird, however you want to do it. You've got a lot to like there. Plus, they've been able to produce some homegrown arms occasionally as well in the bullpen. So I think there's a lot to like about getting a guy like Bird. And then, obviously, another move quick here in the bullpen. We could talk about it in Camilo Duvall. It happened right before we came on air. You get a guy who was really expected to be a part of that top tier of relievers, but wasn't kind of held in that same regard as the Durans, the Bednars, the Helsleys. So ultimately, you get him for Jesus Rodriguez, which takes a hit to the catching depth in the organization as a whole, and a couple of other pieces. I know you're furiously trying to get the graphic together, but it's okay. All things considered, you get a guy in Duvall who talk about the 4th reliever. Oh, you got it. Kudos to you, man. Listen, you didn't have to give up a ton to get him. The catching depth in the organization is now going to be a story going into the offseason and into the season beyond. But one other piece of that is you've got Ben Rice and Austin Wells, who are both relatively young, controlled players and have produced. Now, if they can remember what out it is, that's another story. But they're both guys who can be key cogs in the catching part of things for some time. So, yes, you give up Rodriguez, you give up Freeling as well, but you get a guy in Duvall who, again, is a controlled arm, a high leverage arm, and a guy who you can really build a bullpen around, just like Bird, just like Bednar, for the future. I'm pretty high on it, and I think we're kind of beating the same, horse here for the consecutive kind of conversation. But I'm glad that's the conversation we're having, and not the Yankees didn't get any high leverage arms, because in the span of a couple hours, they went from having, if Devin Williams can come back down to Devin Williams form, and Luke Weaver, if he's Luke Weaver again and 100%, and if Fernando Cruz comes back, and all these questions, to now you have 3 rock solid arms, 2 of them who could pitch in the 8th and the 9th, and a pretty good base for a bullpen beyond just this season.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, like you just said, what the Yankees have been able to do in making this bullpen not just, a problem for this year, but a problem for years to come. You have now 3 guys that are locked up on top of Leiter and possibly Loaizaga, and whichever. I think one of Weaver and Williams will be back. I don't think both of them will be, because contract, will get too high. But that's a bullpen for not just this year, but for the future. That's going to be fun. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of people are overlooking, everyone that the Yankees have gotten, Bednar, Bird, and Duvall, and maybe not Bird as much. He only has 1 career save, but these are guys that have had big leverage innings and work for their respective teams. Bednar, a closer that's 17 of 17 in save situations. Bird has pitched, any big inning, any lead, that anytime Colorado has a lead, which isn't often, Bird's been the guy that's called out of the bullpen. Duvall now, same deal, 15 saves with San Francisco. It is rare to have a team that's got so many options that, I mean, let's be real. The Yankees don't have a closer. It's closer by committee now. Weaver can close. Williams can close. I mean, Jonathan Loaizaga got his first save since 2022 today, as the Yankees finished off the series, win against the Rays. But Duvall can close. Bird in a pinch can, close if you have to. And even go further. Some of the other guys we're not thinking about. Hamilton, when he's on, could do it too. Some of the guys coming back could. This is a team that has now, an entire bullpen that has pitched in high leverage moments, in moments that make or break a season, make or break a playoff push. And that's what's most important. You see all the prospects they're losing, but at the end of it, who knows if the prospects are going to pan out? We've had that conversation constantly. What you know is that these guys have proven at some capacity that they can play at the major league level, that they could pitch at the major league level. I think that's what's fun to watch here. These aren't just, a 6th inning guy that the Yankees traded for, or 2 6th inning guys and an 8th inning guys. These are 9th inning guys the Yankees traded for, and that just makes it so much more of a matchup game on top of what you have in the bullpen or already, plus, possibly shifting, Cam Schlittler there and Brent Hedrick. Let's give him a round of applause for what he's been able to do as of late. And he's got a nice life to his fastball. This is a team that can go in so many different directions. And on top of that, you're prepared for when someone gets injured, because it's bound to happen. The season's still got 2 months to go. Someone else is going to get injured, and you have so many guys that can just step back up. And now your worst guy in the bullpen is probably, in many guys or many other teams' eyes, probably a guy that could be their 7th inning guy, right? And that is a luxury to have in this day and age.
A third of the bullpen has been turned over at this deadline. And now you talk about what this bullpen looks like as a whole. You mentioned the possibility of Schlittler. You've also got the scenario where Ryan Yarbrough comes back and he gets added to the fold. He was pitching well before he got hurt. Fernando Cruz, Mark Leiter Jr., both of them coming back from the IL in some time. When you talk about this list, all things considered, you now have Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, David Bednar, Camilo Duvall, Jake Bird, Fernando Cruz, Mark Leiter Jr., Tim Hill, Jonathan Loizaga, Ian Hamilton, Ryan Yarbrough, Yuri De Los Santos, Brent Hedrick, and then potentially Schlittler or Warren, or if Stroman ever decides to budge and go to the bullpen before he ends up DFA'd, whatever happens with Marcus Stroman in the future. Some of those guys are going to go. Some of them are not going to be on this roster when you get into the big months. It's impossible for them to keep all of them. But you talk about the possibility of a Schlittler added to the pen. You talk about other guys who could rise in September. And, you talk about a Brent Hedrick who might have been the quickest to get DFA'd, but now could get retained, especially because he's a lefty, maybe for the entirety of the season. So there's so many moving pieces when you talk about the bullpen, so much flexibility that you didn't have before. And like you said, there's a lot of guys now who could be the 7th inning guy for another team, high leverage guy for another team. And that's a big situation flip from a week ago for the Yankees, that a bullpen that desperately needed help. They got 3 really, really solid arms. So outside of that, they did make, outside of the Slater trade as well, one more move. They got Caballero. They also traded Oswald Peraza. So that was kind of the answer back to that. Jose Caballero, the infielder from the Tampa Bay Rays, funny enough, will just walk across the dugout and come back with the Yankees, or go with the Yankees for their road trip. The infielder, 34 stolen bases on the season, a solid on-base percentage, a much higher OPS than Oswald Peraza, 226 average. He has something that Oswald Peraza didn't have left as well, major or minor league options. He can go to the AAA level and eat some time up there and then get added back to the roster for the postseason. In exchange, Tampa Bay Rays get a guy who I think there's still a lot of upside with, a lot of meat on the bone left with Everson Pereira, but with injuries these last 2 seasons, haven't been able to see him to his full potential. So Pereira heads to Tampa Bay, plus a player to be named later. See what happens in the future with Pereira. I think that's a guy that I'll at least be rooting for. I think you will be as well. And in exchange, you get another depth piece in Caballero who can be a more productive version of Oswald Peraza or Jorge Vivas.
Yeah, I mean, you start, I'll echo the sentiment about Everson Pereira, just a guy that couldn't find it. There's not really a spot for him in New York, right? The Yankees outfield, we've talked about it. They got five and maybe 5.1 outfielders. I'll give, Stanton a 0.1 out of 1. So maybe 5.1 outfielders. Ahmed Rosario could play outfield too. So, I mean, they have so many outfield options. There was no spot on this year's roster for Everson Pereira. You think about the 40-man roster crunch that happens every offseason. This was a smart move by the Yankees, especially considering Jose Caballero. He's not a free agent until 2030. You've got him locked up. And that, again, to go with, the fact that he's got options left, and you're going to probably have to option him when Aaron Judge comes back. Somebody's got to get off this roster when Judge comes back, unless there's an injury. So you have to imagine Caballero gets sent down for a couple of weeks, but he's a guy that I'm going to bring, true Bomber Boy listeners back to an argument that Dylan and I had last year over the name Duke Ellis, being on the postseason roster, and how we were, blown away by that move by the Yankees. Caballero is a lot better than, Duke Ellis, a younger guy that's just cracking the majors the last couple of seasons, guy that still goes up and down, but a guy that, like we said, he's tied for the major league lead in stolen bases. The Yankees, they need help on the base paths. They finally got some stuff going last night. Volpe, Jazz, I mean, it was nice to see. But running provides a whole different threat. And the Yankees, I think it's been seen more recently, you can't just rely on the long ball, because the way the bullpen was, not is anymore, but was, they were giving up the long ball too, and they were giving those runs back up. So you needed to find small ball ways to win. You think about the extra inning troubles on the road, having a guy like Caballero to start off an inning at second base, steal third base, and then a wild pitch, pass ball, sac fly, ground ball gets him home. This is a huge move that is probably going to be overlooked until it comes up, for the Yankees, whether that be in the next couple days before likely he gets sent down for Aaron Judge, or in the postseason when he comes up clutch in terms of, running and his fielding. I mean, the honest factor that, I think Brian Cashman probably made this move for was less about his speed and more about the fact that Anthony Volpe has been awful at shortstop. And it comes down to, the 8th, 9th inning of the World Series. If you get there, right? I think the Yankees put themselves in a lot better of a situation today to get there than they were, 24 hours ago. But, a guy to go in at short and play really good defense instead of Volpe. And that's not, necessarily a knock at Volpe. It's what's going to win you the World Series. It's what's going to win you games in the playoffs. You have to be sharp on defense. You can't give away extra outs. It's a 27-out ball game. You can't be giving outs 28, 29, 30 like the Yankees are doing right now. So I think this is a move that we won't really see come to fruition for a couple weeks, probably a couple months. He'll be back up in September, I'd have to imagine, when the roster expands to 28. And then he's going to be on that playoff roster, and he's going to make an impact. And then you think about the offseason. Could Oswaldo Cabrera be on the move? Something like that. I think Caballero is a guy the Yankees are going to want to keep around for a while.
28 years old, as you mentioned, controlled for some time with the organization. And in a guy who you just said it perfectly there, he's defensively keen. And that feels like kind of the biggest overarching theme of all 4 position player additions. We broke down Rosario and McMahon in depth on the past episode of Bomber Boys, but both guys who are really solid defensively. Slater's really solid defensively. And you get a guy in Caballero who's a freak athlete and really, really good defensively. And those are the guys you want late in the game, because as much as you say, we're going to pinch hit him for speed or pinch hit him for contact, or because Rosario and Slater both rank amongst the top pinch hitters when you look back at the past couple years, especially Slater. When you talk about those guys, you also need to factor in more than likely they're going to have to play an inning, couple innings in the field. And if those are your highest leverage innings, those are the innings that are going to make or break whether or not you win a World Series. Do you want Anthony Volpe out there? Do you want Jason Dominguez out there? Sorry. Do you want guys who have proven this season that they're still green defensively? And that's okay. And because you still trade the fact that, they're going to produce, hopefully in Volpe's case, and for the most part in Dominguez's case. So when you talk about what those guys can bring in those big impact situations, you've got guys in Rosario, in McMahon now into the fold who will be an everyday starter, Caballero, and of course now with Austin Slater, that if they are on the roster for the postseason, then all 4 of them likely will be in some way, shape, or form. They are all 4 guys who will make an impact with their glove, just as much with their bat, just as much, all 4 of them with their speed as well, a little bit more athletic, maybe a little bit less with Ryan McMahon than the rest of the pack here. So I think all as a whole, when you look at what they were able to do with position players, what they were able to do with the bullpen, you said it off the top here. To just echo the sentiment again, they were able to add a lot of depth. And you see the dealt list versus the acquired list. It is a hell of a lot longer than what the acquired list is, but that's how you know the Yankees had a very, very productive deadline. McMahon, Rosario, Slater, Bednar, Bird, Duvall, Caballero, and then Wilberson de Pena all added, and in exchange, you lost a whole bunch of prospects. But we expected that. When you listen back to 2 Bomber Boys ago, we broke down that we figured this would be a gutting of the farm system. It gutted a lot of depth in the farm system. It gutted some guys we both like, but at the same time, the top 5, the guys who were your untouchables, George Lombard Jr., Spencer Jones. You talk about as well, Cam Schlittler, Bryce Cunningham, Carlos LaGrange, Ben Hess, all those guys are still with the organization. When you look at what was done, we said both of us B+. It's a successful deadline, but now I'll boil it down to one move for you. What was your favorite move of the deadline for the New York Yankees?
Honestly, I think it's too early to tell. I think that's a loser answer, and I'll call myself a loser. I don't really care. But I think you have to go, as much as I really didn't like it when it first went down, Ryan McMahon has already made an instant impact for the New York Yankees, right? And as much as I'm excited to see the relievers, because I think that's where the Yankees really needed to target, right? And that was one of their biggest needs. or not one of, it was their biggest need, and they accomplished that with those three guys. Ryan McMahon has already provided for the New York Yankees. He had the walk-off last night. He had 4 runs batted in going into today for the Yankees. I'm trying to look at his updated stats now. 5 games played. He's batting .353, 6 for 17. He's also walked 3 times. So, I mean, this is a guy that's been on base 9 of his 17 at bats, right? 9 of his, 21 plate appearances for the Yankees. This is a guy that actually 10 because he got hit by a pitch too. This is a guy that's made that impact. And we think about what the Yankees, had at third base between Oswald Peraza and Jorbit Vivas. They really had nothing at third base. Even when Jazz was at third, he was struggling more than he is at second, right? Both in the field and at the plate. You put him back at his natural position, and it's improved his game a lot. So I think for me, it's got to be Ryan McMahon, because I think the Yankees did need something offensively. I don't know if they needed everyone they got offensively, but I still think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think Ryan McMahon headlines it. It was also the first move to break. And if you knew how, you and I were last week, we were calling for the first move to be made like 3 weeks ago, right? And it didn't happen. So for that first move to already have gone down, McMahon, I think he's already got a WAR that's, I don't like WAR because I couldn't tell you how to calculate it, but he's got a .4 WAR. Vivas and Peraza combined for a negative WAR. That alone tells you you've made the right move. And again, I'm still excited to see the relievers. And if you asked me this in October, hopefully in October, right? I could change it, but definitely Ryan McMahon so far.
For me, it's kind of cut and dry too. It was the biggest of the moves, I think, that came today. I think the biggest move for the Yankees as a whole. I think it was getting rid of Cookie Carrasco. No, I'm kidding. And sending Carlos Carrasco the best of luck in Atlanta. No, Oswald's the one that broke my heart. You know that. Oswald Peraza.
I agree.
Been a fan of for some time, and I hope he rakes in Los Angeles.
Side note quickly on Oswald, I'm batting .308 with him in my MLB The Show franchise, and I love every minute of it, and I'm in game like 100. It's just so much fun.
It's not the Oswald Peraza problem. It's the Yankees problem. Peraza's good in MLB The Show. He's going to be great in Los Angeles. But for me, it's guys who are heading to Pittsburgh and a guy who's coming back from Pittsburgh. That was my favorite move. The Yankees did not give up nearly as much as I expected them to give up for a guy in David Bednar, who's controlled for some time. He's a winner. He's passionate. And he's a guy who I'm a big fan of. I've been a big fan of. And I would have loved them to walk away with Bednar and Keller. And I think there hopefully will be another deal with Pittsburgh down the line, maybe for a guy who dons number 30 and has a hell of a mustache and Paul Skeens. But that's just pie in the sky dreams right now. No, that's a pie in the sky dream. But as it stands, David Bednar, I think for me was my favorite move. I think the ebbs and flows with Devin Williams this year, Luke Weaver being banged up, it exploited a massive, massive hole in the Yankees back into the bullpen. And to me, the most sure-handed of all the options they now have is going to be Bednar. And I think he's the guy who, for me, gives the highest likelihood of hearing this is the guy who closes out World Series number 28. If it gets to that point, big if, there's still a lot of moving pieces, a lot of baseball left, a lot to be done. And there's also a lot of other teams that had really, really good Major League Baseball trade deadlines. I'll just kind of to sum it up, because we've done a lot of Bomber Boys this week. I'll just ask you your biggest winner.
Are you sick? Wait, are you sick of me?
No. You're coming up to.
I was going to say, you better not be.
This weekend, man. Ay. But listen, I'm going to have you give your team that is the biggest winner of the deadline and team that's the biggest loser of the deadline. You can start with either. I can bounce back however you want to do it, but just your biggest winner first or biggest loser. I really don't care.
I was going to say, you just told me I could go whatever order I wanted.
I'm losing it, Matt.
Honestly, I think the biggest loser is a team that, you didn't really expect much from at the deadline, but it just shows their season holistically, and that's the Baltimore Orioles, right? With everything they gave away this deadline. Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, Cedric Mullins, Ramon Urias, Andrew Kittredge, Gregory Soto, and I think I may have missed someone that came in just after the deadline. It's just a team that everyone was so high on. They made the postseason. They've got a young core. And to me, it kind of shows a shifting of the guard for Baltimore. You expected Adley and Gunnar and, all those young guys, Jackson, Holiday, all those young guys to do something that could help those other pieces that I just said that got moved in the deal. Sir Anthony Dominguez also got shipped away in the middle of a doubleheader, which was kind of funny. But I just think Baltimore as a whole, they're not too far out of it. 50 and 59. They've been playing good baseball, and they go just tear apart their team that made the playoffs last year. Yes, they got swept, but it just feels like the opposite of what you want to be doing when you've got a young core like them. Sure, you've got players that you can bring up and fill in, but this is just the complete opposite of what you would have expected from Baltimore early on in the season. Yes, I could say that the last, couple months were kind of showing this way, but just Baltimore, so many guys moving. And honestly, their trades, I didn't think they moved the needle in terms of returns. And that's tough for me to say because I know Yankees prospects and I couldn't really tell you many more prospects. But I would say that would be my biggest loser. Baltimore just didn't do enough for me in terms of the returns they got for some really good players that I think they could have bounced back next year and gotten to the postseason. All it would have taken was, some starting pitching that they refused to go get in the offseason. Now, my biggest winner, I'm going to hate myself for saying this. No, I'm not, because I'm going to go a different team. I was going to say the crosstown team, the New York Mets, because I thought they had a good deal. But then I looked a couple teams down on my notes. San Diego Padres. I mean, Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, Freddie Furman, Mason Miller, JP Sears, Nestor Cortez, right as the deadline, went off. That's just a haul for a team that's trying to catch up to the Dodgers, a team that could be a World Series contender, a team with a lot of talent to begin with, right? You think about all those guys, Fernando Tatis, Xander Bogaerts, so many guys there. Their pitching staff's been solid. The name Cease was thrown around, and so was Swartz. They kept both of them and added all these guys. This is a team I'd want to watch out for. This is a team I would not want to see if the Yankees were to make it to that final series in the playoffs. That's the World Series, because I think they're loaded. I think they've got we talk about the Yankees having depth, right? A guy like, Brett Hedrick can come up and provide outs for the Yankees, right? Well, this isn't just guys that can provide outs, right? For San Diego. This is a team that's got major league talent that doesn't even have spots, right? There's going to be major leaguers playing in AAA. And to me, that's a team that's going to be competitive. It's a team that's going to be dangerous and a team that can go in a lot of different directions. So I think I have to go San Diego. I think they made the biggest move, in my opinion, with Mason Miller, a guy that, torched teams last year, struggled a little bit more this year, but has still been really solid. A guy that doesn't, one of those guys that probably didn't need a change of scenery, just like Bednar, but a change of scenery is only going to help him get better, right? A more, competitive team, honestly, just better team, better organization all around than Oakland or Athletics. Sorry, they don't even have a city. So I think that move alone could have won them the deadline, and then they go do everything else they do. So San Diego, a team I don't want to see in October, but a team that I think had a really strong deadline.
I was going to say San Diego as well. I do think that the future for them looks a little bit more shaky with all the prospects that they gave up. I mean, they gave up 3 of their top 5 guys.
It's make or break this year. That's honestly
5 of their top 10 and 7 of their top 15, and all in all, 10 of their top 30. A third of their top 30 prospects are no longer with the organization after today. They emptied the tank for this year. I mean, if they win it, they win it, and nobody will ever question it. But, I mean, if this goes up in a ball of fire, I don't know if anybody will look at San Diego's deadline other than just to laugh. But I'm going to go with the team from crosstown. I'm not too proud. I mean, they are the team that, other than San Diego, probably had the best deadline. You talk about going out and getting Ryan Helsley. That was probably one of, if not the best reliever you could get on the market. And it was a perfect answer back to Duran going to Philadelphia. So that's definitely the first place to start with them. You also go out and get Tyler Rogers as well, who's a rental. You go out and get Gregory Soto. You desperately needed a lefty, plus Brooks Rally's coming back. So you've got 2 pretty good lefties that you really could rely on there that you added that are kind of a moot point after you talk about Helsley and Rogers, but still pretty key cogs of the bullpen that desperately needed arms in the fold. And then you go out and get Cedric Mullins, a guy who's really hitting his stride at this point in the season. He's been great defensively. His bat's been strong, and he's a guy who immediately can make an impact to that outfield. It was going to be either him, Luis Robert, or somebody else. They had to make an outfield move. It's funny how many moves that the Phillies and Mets both made that kind of reflected both of their needs. They both needed an outfielder. They both got it. They both needed a legitimate either number, your eighth inning guy, number two guy in the pen to your closer, or in the Phillies case, needed your closer, Duran. And you talk about now how it looks moving forward. I don't think both of them gave up that much at the deadline either. And then to me, the loser, I think it's the Minnesota Twins. You're 2 years removed from making the postseason with so much excitement, so much juice around the organization. You go out, you spend big, you get Carlos Correa, and now he's back in Houston. You go out and you have two really, really good relievers in Duran and Jackson. Now both of them are new faces in new places. Bader's gone. And it just feels like Willie Castro's gone. It feels like, as unfortunate as it is, this is a Twins team that is going to kind of find themselves fledgling at the next couple years, but also floundering, really is the better word, around the bottom of baseball, because they're a kind of team that could have invested resources into the team after that run and made this team a powerhouse of the future. And instead, they look like they're just going to be a bottom barrel team in the AL for some time, which is sad because the fans of Minnesota deserved a winner after how much juice was around that team in 2023. And this is now ultimately what they get. A team that doesn't seem like people are going to want to play for either, because they haven't proven they're going to continue to invest in building a winner. And that reflects, and it reflects in the long term. So those are my winners and losers. Those are your winners and losers. Any parting thoughts on what was one of the most exciting deadlines I think we've had in the past couple of years? Really, I would say since the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best. That's what I was going to say. One of the most fun deadlines. I mean, you and I came into the studio a couple minutes before we went live, and I mean, we're just move after move right at the deadline. We haven't seen that in quite some time, and I think that was fun. I think it also shows that, there's so many teams that want to be competitive this year. This year, everything's wide open. The Dodgers aren't running away with the NL. There's no team running away with the AL. In fact, I think the AL got more competitive today than it had been the rest of the season with the moves that almost every team that's competing made. So I think when you think about that as a whole, it feels like baseball's deadline is one of the most fun deadlines year in and year out, but this really cemented that. And I think with that being said, it's just going to be a fun end to this season, right? And I think for us sitting here doing a Yankees podcast, we're going to have a great time at the end of this season based off what the Yankees did. I could easily put them as our winner too, right? They didn't part ways with one of their top 7 prospects, any of their top 7 prospects. They kept them all. They got what they needed. So just a really successful deadline. I will say, I said it at the beginning, I can't wait to shut my phone off and just leave it off for a couple hours, right? Just relax, maybe watch some regular TV instead of trade deadline talk. Just been glued to Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, along with every MLB, show going on. So fun deadline, exhausting deadline, lots of moves to track, but all around a lot of fun at the deadline. And I think the Yankees, I mean, real quick, just to finish this off, I know we're trying to go probably eat dinner. If you were to put a spot right now on the Yankees in terms of, now they're 60-49, so they've played 109 games. Quick math, what does that leave? 103? No,
50.
Not 100, 53. Wow.
I said 153. You said 100. So we were all over the place.
So they have 53 games left. They're sitting at 60-49. What, with their moves today, where would you have them record-wise?
60-49 now. There's 53 games left. Say they finish over 500 the rest of the way, which puts them over 85 wins. I think they finish the year out at around 90 wins and maybe 72 losses, which, all things considered, is about where I had them and you had them in our predictions to start the season. So, I mean, they made a lot of moves, and I think they could finish better than that. They could get to a 95 win, 93 win mark and kind of call their shots in the American League. They're still not that far off of, Toronto, and there's still a very, very good chance they could be one of the top 2 teams in the American League when it's all said and done. Astros also got a lot better. That's scary. That's always scary with how the Yankees play the Astros in the postseason. But, I didn't make this example the other day. It's kind of the one that I haven't been able to scratch. The Tigers, to me, when we were on the phone, we talked about it privately, but they feel like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They feel like a team that is a year away from really making their lasting mark in the postseason. And then you look at the rest of the postseason contenders. The Mariners are a little scary now after they got better. The Rangers could be in the mix, and I would not want to see DeGrom, Eovaldi, or Merrill Kelly in the postseason. I don't know how I'd feel about Houston, but I think the Yankees did just as much to compete with all those teams. And if they can get to a 93, 95 win mark, they could be the number 2 seed in the American League, and they could kind of control, outside of maybe going to Detroit, they could control their destiny.
I mean, absolutely. I was the one on our show that said the Yankees were going to go 81-81 when the season began. Just keep 500. But this is a team that I think, and I'm confident saying this, I think the Yankees finish first place in the AL East now, right? The Blue Jays have come down to earth after playing exceptionally for a 2-month stretch, but you knew eventually they were going to come back down. The Yankees have been so bad for that same 2-month stretch that they fall behind. I mean, they're 4 games back now, or 3.5 games back of the Blue Jays. They've made up ground. I really think the Yankees win the AL East with the moves they made. I do agree. The Tigers, I wouldn't really want to face them, but I still think they're a year away, kind of like the Thunder. I think Texas is the team no one wants to see. Their bats have finally picked it up after a really slow start to the season, and their pitching staff just got better. Look, if I'm the Yankees, that's the one team I don't want to see round one, just like, last year, there was the teams that you didn't want to see. Baltimore ran into the wrong one, which I think was Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just, you avoid Texas if you can. I don't think that'll be a fun series, but I think the Yankees can compete with anyone. I think the Yankees now have everything to compete for the World Series. My one concern would be the starting rotation. If Luis Gil does not return to form, I think the Yankees are screwed.
Well, he's as good of a deal as a deadline acquisition. That's what Brian Cashman says, right? It might have been a little bit better to have a more reliable starter, but outside of that, that's really the only hole you can poke in. And otherwise, pretty darn solid deadline for Brian Cashman and co. Justin, I mean, what do you got going on this weekend?
I don't know, not much. I think I'm just gonna sit around. Oh wait, coming up to hang out with you.
Let's go.
Can't wait.
Man.
I can't wait.
Justin Ciavolella takes his first trip up to the Catskills. That's on tap this weekend. Maybe we'll have a recap of it on Bomber Boys next week. It was a hell of a deadline. It's been a hell of a couple days for Yankees content. Just like you, I'm excited to kick back, do a quick story for Catskills News, and then get ready to enjoy some slumber and do it all over again tomorrow.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow. And for Bomber Boys fans, well, follow us on Spotify, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You get the gist. But anyways, wherever you are, wherever you may be, thank you for hanging with both of us for this experience as we react to the deadline in real time. And we will be with you again next week. But until then, have a fantastic weekend.